Last images of Brazilian tourist who was left to die by Indonesian guide and authorities after she fell during a hike on Rinjani volcano. Juliana Marins was a 26-year-old woman from Brazil who loved to travel. She worked as a publicist and had a free, adventurous spirit. In February, she started a solo backpacking trip across Southeast Asia. She visited Vietnam, Thailand, and the Philippines. Friends and family described her as curious, brave, and full of life. By June, she decided to go to Indonesia to climb Mount Rinjani, the country's second highest volcano. This volcano is on the island of Lombok and rises more than 3,700 meters. It is very beautiful but also very dangerous. It is an active volcano that has erupted many times in recent years. For locals, Rinjani is a sacred place, but for tourists, it is a famous hiking goal. Mount Rinjani sees over 150,000 hikers each year. Many people dream of reaching its summit to see the sunrise and the crater lake, but the climb is much harder than it looks in photos. Climbing Rinjani is not simple. First, hikers must walk through hot grassy land just to reach the start of the main trail. Even the shortest route takes 2 days. By late afternoon, the ground turns to black volcanic sand and loose rock, making each step tiring. Most hikers camp at the crater rim overnight. On summit day, the climb starts around 2 a.m. in the freezing dark. The last stretch is steep, sandy, and exhausting. For every 3 steps you take, you often slide 2 steps back. Strong winds and thin air make it even harder. If all goes well, hikers reach the top at sunrise and see breathtaking views. But the trail is exposed and dangerous. One wrong step can lead to disaster. On June 22nd, Juliana set off with 5 other hikers and 1 guide. The first day went fine. On summit day, the group started in the dark. At some point, Juliana became very tired and asked to rest. For reasons still unclear, the guide and the rest of the group continued without her, leaving her alone. Her family says she was alone for over an hour. Around 6 a.m., just after sunrise, Juliana slipped and fell almost 300 meters into a steep ravine. Her backpack, walking stick, and flashlight were found on the trail above. Another group of hikers nearby had a drone. They flew it over the ravine and saw Juliana. She was alive, moving, and waving for help. The hikers shouted to her to hold on and dropped a note telling her that help was coming. They waited for hours, hoping rescuers would arrive. Getting to Juliana was extremely hard. Local rescue teams had to climb more than 3,000 meters carrying ropes and medical gear. The slope was very steep with no trees to attach ropes to, so they had to build makeshift anchors. Fog reduced visibility, rain made the ropes slippery, and winds made helicopter rescue impossible. By the time rescuers reached the first location where the drone had seen her, she had fallen again to an even lower spot. The team tried for days to reach her. Finally, on June 24th, they got to her, but it was too late. She had died from severe injuries, including broken bones and internal bleeding. Juliana's family was heartbroken and believed she could have survived if help had come sooner. They blamed the guide for leaving her in the park for poor safety measures. Many hikers spoke out, saying Rinjani is far more dangerous than it appears online, with little rescue support and no quick way to get help. The government later promised stricter rules for guides, more safety posts, and better training. Juliana had followed the rules and booked a guided tour, yet a simple rest break turned fatal. Final moments of a man before being sucked to death by the left engine of an Airbus A320 aircraft. The accident happened at Orio al Serio Airport, also called Milan Bergamo, at 10:20 a.m. on July 8, 2025. The victim was 35-year-old builder Andrea Russo from Calcinat, near Bergamo. Reports say he ran onto the runway and into the path of an Airbus A319 Valencia plane that was about to fly to Orense, Spain. He was pulled into the engine just as the plane was getting ready to leave. The plane had just finished being pushed back from its parking spot. After the accident, all flights at the airport stopped, which caused delays and changes to other flights. The cargo ship SS El Faro on September 29, 2015, shortly before it departed Jacksonville, FL, and sailed directly into the path of a Category 4 hurricane. It would sink in the North Atlantic on the morning of October 1st, killing all 33 crew members aboard. The mask worn by Edward John Louis Paisnel, the Beast of Jersey, a notorious offender who terrorized the Channel Island of Jersey for a period of 11 years, from 1960 to 1971. He entered homes at night dressed in a rubber mask and nail-studded bracelets and attacked children. Peisnel was a builder who also built his own shrine for Satan in a barn to which he would bring his victims, all girls and boys snatched from their homes. It was revealed during the trial that he was inspired by Gilles de Rais, a notorious 15th century occultist and child killer. He would clad himself in a woman's black wig, a rubber mask, and a long overcoat with nail-studded lapels and shoulders, and was said to have led a Jekyll and Hyde type of existence. He was an exemplary human and took in orphan children along with his wife, but at night he would change into a murderer. Jersey, located between England and France, was known at the time as a beautiful, quiet place with low crime rates. Around 50,000 to 70,000 people lived there. But in November of 1957, that peace was shattered when a nurse was waiting alone at a bus stop late at night, and a man suddenly appeared, put a rope around her neck, and dragged her into a field. He attacked and assaulted her and left her badly injured. She told the police that the man had a strange, fake Irish accent and a musty smell. In March 1958, another woman was attacked and assaulted in the same way. Then in July, a third woman was targeted. All three were grabbed at bus stops, had ropes tied around their necks, and were dragged into fields. The pattern was clear. In August 1959, a fourth woman was attacked, but he wasn't successful with the assault because the woman managed to fight him off. Police now knew the cases were linked. Every victim described the same smell, the fake accent, and the rope. Cigarette cartons were often found at the scenes. In February 1960, the beast broke into a home for the first time. A 12-year-old boy woke to see a man with a flashlight at the end of his bed. The man tied a rope around his neck, dragged him to a field, assaulted him, and then returned him home. Police found that the attacker had climbed in through a window. The next month, a man pretending to be a doctor offered a 25-year-old woman a lift. She got in his car thinking he was safe. He tied her up, assaulted her, and tried to drive her away. She escaped and screamed for help, causing him to flee. Soon after, the beast broke into the home of a woman and her 14-year-old daughter. He cut the phone lines, assaulted the daughter, and escaped. In 1960 and 1961, he attacked 4 more children aged 8 to 12, all taken from their homes to fields. The attacks shocked the island. Scotland Yard sent Detective Jack Manning to help. Police questioned thousands of people and asked every man on the island to give fingerprints. Only 13 men refused. One of them was the beast himself, but police didn't follow up. Attention turned to a local loner named Alphonse, who was innocent, but the public believed he was guilty and burned down his house. He fled to a nearby island. While he was gone, attacks stopped for 2 years, but in April 1963 they began again. Between 1963 and 1966, the beast attacked several more children and teenagers. Then nothing happened for over 2 years, until police received a chilling letter from someone claiming to be the beast. He promised 2 perfect crimes. In August 1966, he attacked a 15-year-old girl and made her suffer the same way all his other victims suffered. Then he asked her, "Do you know how long it takes to kill a woman?" 5 minutes. The second promised attack never happened. In August 1970, a 13-year-old boy was attacked in the same way. By now, the beast had been active for over a decade, and police still couldn't catch him. Then, in July 1971, luck finally struck. Police chased a speeding car. The driver tried to escape, even driving on the wrong side of the road before crashing. He ran, but police caught him. Back at the station, they noticed he wore a long coat smelling musty, just like the victims described. Inside his pockets were spiked wristbands, a flashlight, a wig, and a terrifying mask. Edward was born on Jersey and was married to Joan, who ran a foster home for children. He was known as Uncle Ted to the kids, bringing them sweets and even dressing as Santa. Outwardly, he seemed kind and helpful. In reality, he was living a double life. Police searched his home and found a hidden room. Inside were wigs, masks, raincoats, photos of victims' homes, and occult objects. There was an altar with books on black magic. Victims had said the beast knew their homes well. Now police saw how much he planned each attack. Edward admitted nothing, simply saying, "Prove it." But the evidence was clear. He had been one of the 13 men who refused to give fingerprints years earlier. In November 1971, Edward was tried and found guilty of 13 attacks. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison. In 1972, his wife published a book saying she had no idea he was the beast. Some believed her, others did not. Alphonse, the wrongly accused man, lived in exile for 14 years before returning to Jersey. He died in 2012 at age 97. Edward was released in 1991 after serving 20 years. He was considered a model prisoner and allowed to return to Jersey, but locals forced him to leave. He moved to the Isle of Wight, where he died of a heart attack in 1994. Although he was charged with 13 crimes, police believe there were more victims. Some later came forward, saying he attacked them in his wife's foster home. In December 1966, 20-year-old Tula Hook was waiting at a bus stop but never made it home. Her body was found the next morning with severe head injuries. The case was never solved, but the method, a lone woman at a bus stop, matched the beast's known style. On February 18, 2020, 17-year-old Japanese girl known online as Minmin live-streamed from a railway station in Yokohama, Kanagawa Prefecture. This image captures her final moments before the train killed her. And no, it was not an accident. Less than 5 minutes after this photo was taken, 114 of these people dancing were dead, with another 216 injured. The Hyatt Regency skywalk collapse happened on July 17, 1981 in Kansas City, Missouri. An improperly designed skywalk on the 4th floor collapsed onto the 2nd floor skywalk, clearly visible in the background of the photo, crushing numerous people. The pancaked 4th and 2nd floor skywalks then collapsed onto the dance floor below, where hundreds had been participating in a dance party. The scene was devastating. Many people were killed instantly. Others were trapped under heavy steel, glass, and concrete. The hotel's sprinkler system broke, flooding the area and putting some survivors at risk of drowning. Rescuers rushed in, but the debris was too heavy for the tools they had. Local construction crews brought cranes and other equipment to help. Working in the dark, wet, and dusty conditions, rescuers sometimes had to remove bodies or even amputate limbs to save people. In total, 114 people died and 216 were injured. Almost everyone in Kansas City knew someone affected. An investigation found the main cause was a change in the original walkway design. The plans called for long steel rods to hold both the 2nd and 4th floor walkways, but during construction, they were replaced with shorter rods, which doubled the weight the 4th floor beams had to carry. This flaw, combined with the crowd on the walkways, caused the collapse. The investigation also revealed poor communication, skipped safety checks, and rushed decisions. No one person double-checked the final design, and each group assumed someone else had done it. The engineering firm responsible lost its licenses in several states, and more than 300 lawsuits followed. The disaster led to major changes in engineering rules, building codes, and the way future engineers are trained. This blurry video still of an unknown man about to die in the 2004 tsunami is so haunting. We don't get to see last images of people accepting their fate too often. It's as if he's facing a firing squad and there's no escape. The last known picture of Jerry Lynn Waldrop, one of the many victims of Dean Corll. He and his brother disappeared on January 30th, 1971, while heading to a bowling alley. He was only 13 years old when he was murdered. In February 2012, a picture was released to the news media of another unknown victim of Dean Corll. The color Polaroid image had been found in the personal possessions of one of his accomplices. The image shows an obviously horrified blonde-haired boy in handcuffs, strapped to an undepicted device upon Corll's floor. Alongside a toolbox known to contain various instruments Corll is known to have used to torture his victims. The individual depicted has been ruled out by the Harris County Medical Examiner as being any of Corll's known victims, including his one remaining known unidentified victim. Henley himself has stated that the picture must have been taken after he had acquired a Polaroid camera in 1972, although he is adamant that he has no idea who this boy is. Given that Henley became acquainted with Corll in 1972, it is likely this boy would have been killed in 1972 or 1973. Dean Arnold Corll was born on Christmas Eve 1939 in Fort Wayne, Indiana. He was the oldest of 2 sons. His parents, Mary Robinson and Arnold Corll, had a troubled marriage. Arnold was strict, while Mary was very protective of Dean. They often fought and divorced in 1946. Mary moved with Dean and his younger brother Stanley to Memphis, Tennessee. Arnold had joined the Air Force, and Mary still wanted the boys to see their father. In 1950, Mary and Arnold got back together and moved to Pasadena, Texas, but the marriage ended again in 1953. In 1955, Mary married a traveling clock salesman named Jake West. They had a daughter named Joyce and settled in Vidor, Texas. Mary and Jake started a small candy company called Pecan Prince. Dean and Stanley helped in the business while attending school. Dean was a quiet child, polite and helpful, but had health problems. At age 7, he had rheumatic fever, which damaged his heart. By age 11, doctors discovered he had a heart murmur. Because of this, he did not take part in sports at school. In high school, Dean was known as a well-behaved but solitary student with average grades. After graduating in 1958, Dean's family moved to Houston to expand their candy company. 2 years later, Dean moved to Indiana to live with his grandmother. He began dating a young woman who asked him to marry her in 1962, but he refused and returned to Texas to help his family's business. In 1963, Mary divorced Jake West, renamed the company Corll Candy Company, and made Dean vice president. That same year, she fired a teenage boy who complained that Dean had made inappropriate advances toward him. In August 1964, Dean was drafted into the Army. He trained as a radio repairman and was stationed at Fort Hood, Texas. While in the military, Dean had his first known intimate experiences with other men. He disliked Army life and requested an early release so he could return to the candy business. He was honorably discharged in June 1965. The family business had moved to Houston Heights, and Dean became known as the Candy Man because he often gave free candy to neighborhood kids. He also became known for showing interest in boys. In 1968, the candy company shut down when Mary and Joyce moved to Colorado. Dean then worked as an electrician. In 1967, he had met a 12-year-old boy named David Brooks. David came from a broken home and saw Dean as a father figure. Dean slowly manipulated David into an inappropriate relationship, offering him gifts and money. By 1970, Dean began his killing spree. When David once caught him assaulting 2 boys, Dean bribed him to stay quiet by offering him a car. Soon, Dean paid David to help lure in victims. The first known victim was 18-year-old Jeffrey Conan, who vanished while hitchhiking home from college. Police believe Dean and David picked him up, took him to Dean's apartment, assaulted him, and then killed him. David later lured 2 boys, 14-year-old James Glass and 15-year-old Danny Yates, from a church rally to Dean's apartment. They were tortured, killed, and buried. In January 1971, 15-year-old Donald Waldrop and his 13-year-old brother Jerry were kidnapped and murdered. From March to May 1971, Dean killed Randall Harvey, 13-year-old David Hilligiest, and 16-year-old Gregory Winkle, all with David's help. Dean even targeted David's own friends, like 17-year-old Reuben Haney, who was lured to the apartment and strangled. In late 1971, David brought 2 unknown boys to Dean's apartment. They were kept alive for several days before being killed. Their identities remain unknown. That same year, David introduced a new friend, 15-year-old Elmer Wayne Henley, to Dean. Dean first planned to kill him, but instead offered him money to help lure victims. Wayne had been friends with 2 of Dean's earlier victims and had even helped search for them. Wayne's first known victim was 17-year-old Willard Branch in February 1972. He claimed he didn't know Dean's true intentions until later, but he kept helping him. Over time, Wayne became more directly involved in the murders. In March 1972, they kidnapped 17-year-old Mark Scott, who fought back but was overpowered. A month later, They kidnapped Johnny Delhomme and Billy Balch. Wayne strangled Billy and shot Johnny, who survived and was freed, the only victim ever released. That summer, Dean killed 17-year-old Stephen Sickman and 19-year-old Roy Bunton. In September, Wally Simoneau and Richard Hembry were abducted and killed. In November, 19-year-old Richard Kepner disappeared. In January 1973, Dean killed 17-year-old Joseph Lyles, David's neighbor. There was a short break when David became sick and Wayne moved away, but when they returned, the killings began again. In June 1973, 15-year-old William Ray Lawrence was tortured for 3 days before being killed. 2 weeks later, 20-year-old Ray Blackburn disappeared while hitchhiking. In July, Wayne met 15-year-old Homer Garcia, who was shot and left to die in Dean's bathtub. Dean's last 5 victims came in quick succession in the summer of 1973. 17-year-old John Sellers, 15-year-old Michael Balch, brother of an earlier victim, 18-year-old Marty Jones, 17-year-old Charles Cobble, and 13-year-old James Dreyer. All were tortured and strangled. The end came on August 8, 1973. Wayne brought 19-year-old Timothy Curley to Dean's home, and 15-year-old Rhonda Williams came along. Dean was angry that a girl was there. That night, after the teens fell asleep, Dean tied up all 3. Wayne convinced Dean to untie him so he could help. As Dean began torturing Timothy, Rhonda asked Wayne if he was going to do anything. At that moment, Wayne had enough. He grabbed Dean's pistol and told him to stop. Dean dared him to shoot, and Wayne fired 6 times, killing him. Wayne called the police and told them everything. At first, they didn't believe him, but when he gave names of missing boys, they started to. A search of Dean's home found a torture board, handcuffs, knives, and other tools. In his van, police found rope, hooks, and a wooden box with air holes. Wayne and David led police to the burial sites. 17 bodies in a rented boat shed, 4 at Lake Sam Rayburn, 6 at High Island Beach, and 1 at Jefferson County Beach. One victim, Mark Scott, was never found. Police believe Dean may have killed more boys. David Brooks was convicted in 1975 for the murder of William Ray Lawrence and sentenced to life in prison. Wayne Henley was convicted of 6 murders and given 6 consecutive 99-year sentences. He was retried in 1979 with the same result. Both men remain in Texas prisons. Dean Corll's crimes remain among the most disturbing serial killings in American history, and his name, the Candyman, is remembered for all the wrong reasons. We've all seen many photographs of JonBenét Ramsey. This one was her very last, taken mere hours before she was assaulted, beaten, and strangled in the basement of her home. She is wearing the same sweater and hair tie she was found in. She was 6 years old, and it was Christmas, her favorite day of the year. China Eastern Flight 5735's final moments caught on a local mining company's security camera. On March 21, 2022, Eastern Airlines Flight 5735 took off from Kunming, China, heading to Guangzhou. It was a short domestic flight with 123 passengers and 9 crew members. The captain had over 6,700 flight hours, and the first officer had more than 31,000 hours. China Eastern Airlines is one of the largest airlines in China, with hundreds of planes flying within China and to other parts of the world. The airline had a strong safety record, with no major accidents in nearly 20 years. Flight 5735 was operated by a Boeing 737, a popular and reliable aircraft model. This particular plane was delivered new to the airline in 2015 and had no reported mechanical problems. The crew included a 32-year-old captain, a 59-year-old first officer with decades of experience, and a 27-year-old second officer in training. All passengers were Chinese citizens from 17 different provinces. The weather was good, and the flight climbed smoothly to its cruising altitude of 29,000 feet. At 2:22 p.m., something went terribly wrong. Without warning, the plane went into a steep dive, dropping from 29,000 feet to 7,400 feet in just over 2 minutes. It briefly climbed again to 8,600 feet, raising hopes, but then plunged straight down until it crashed. A nearby security camera captured the final moments, showing the plane almost vertical before hitting the ground in a mountainous area. The crash caused a large crater and a fire that spread to nearby bamboo forests. Rescue teams faced rough terrain and heavy vegetation. Over 450 firefighters and rescue workers were sent to the site, along with medical teams and psychological support for families. Sadly, there were no survivors. An investigation began immediately, involving Chinese authorities, Boeing, the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, and French experts. The black boxes were found badly damaged, but still provided data. No signs of bad weather, bird strikes, or mechanical failures were found. The plane was working normally until it suddenly started descending. With no distress call from the pilots, investigators considered whether human actions in the cockpit could have been involved. They also checked for possible medical or mental health issues, but no firm conclusions have been reached. As of 2025, the cause is still unknown. Stock prices for Boeing and China Eastern dropped. Families of victims held memorials, but many remain frustrated by the lack of answers. In 1925, a big fire started at Madame Tussauds Wax Museum in London. The fire spread quickly and was so huge that people said it was one of the most amazing and shocking fires the city had seen in years. The museum was full of wax figures of famous people. They looked very real, but the heat from the fire was so strong that the wax melted. Many figures lost their heads, arms, or legs, and their faces changed shape completely. When the fire was over, the melted statues looked a lot like real people who had been hurt badly. Esther Swaab Fransman holds her newborn son Moses. Both were murdered in Auschwitz on April 9, 1943, only 5 months later. Valerie Jackson posing with her cake on her 9th birthday on October 6, 1999. On October 18th, her father Brad Jackson smothered her with a pillow and buried her body 50 miles away. In the fall of 1999, on a quiet street in Spokane, Washington, a man named Brad Jackson lived with his 9-year-old daughter Valerie and his parents. Brad had sole custody because Valerie's mother, Roseanne Pleasant, had left years earlier and had no contact with her daughter. Valerie was a happy, smart, friendly 4th grader with curly red hair. Teachers and classmates liked her, and she seemed to be doing well. On the morning of October 18, 1999, that peace ended. Around 8:40 a.m., Brad knocked on his neighbor's door, crying. He said Valerie was missing. He explained she had been playing with the dog in the backyard while he was in the basement doing laundry. He claimed he heard the garage door open and thought she'd gone out front. When it was time to leave for school, he found her backpack on the front steps, but no sign of her. Neighbors helped search the area, but she was nowhere to be found. Brad went to her school, but she hadn't shown up. At 8:45 a.m., he called the police, describing Valerie's appearance and clothes in exact detail. Detectives and search dogs arrived quickly. They searched the home twice. Brad said he was washing her bed sheets because she'd had a nosebleed the night before. Detectives saw blood spots on her pillow and faded blood on the sheets, but nothing else to back up the nosebleed story. Searchers spread out through the neighborhood, knocking on doors. No one had seen Valerie that morning. She had never run away before, and there was no reason to think she would. The community was shocked. As police looked for leads, they learned that 2 days earlier, a 13-year-old girl had been approached by a man in a flatbed truck offering her cigarettes, drugs, and money. She refused and ran away. Police made a sketch of the man, fearing a predator was in the area. Investigators also wanted to find Valerie's mother, Roseanne, but she had vanished back in 1992. She had struggled with drugs and street work and was last seen weeks after a friend of hers was murdered. Her family had long suspected Brad had something to do with her disappearance. 3 days after Valerie went missing, there was still no sign of her. Police interviewed offenders and canvassed the neighborhood again. Brad's behavior began to raise suspicions. Valerie's uncle, John Stone, believed Brad was responsible for her disappearance, just as he believed Brad had harmed Roseanne years earlier. Brad had a past theft conviction and, in John's opinion, seemed more worried about being suspected than about finding Valerie. A teacher's aide and crossing guard named Shelley Eglin, who knew Valerie well, also began to doubt Brad's story. She said Brad wasn't talking about Valerie much and even made a strange joke, Police learned that Valerie had clashed with Brad's girlfriend, Danette Schroeder. At one point, Danette convinced Brad to take Valerie to a psychiatrist, who prescribed her an antidepressant. Brad and Danette eventually split up, but investigators noted that Valerie had written in her diary a week before she vanished that her father wouldn't leave her alone in her bedroom. Detectives searched Brad's house and cars. Forensics found 2 of Brad's hairs on Valerie's bedding, though this was not strong enough evidence on its own. Still, inconsistencies in Brad's story stood out. Police placed secret GPS trackers in his truck and car, hoping he might lead them to Valerie's body. On November 6, 1999, the GPS showed Brad visiting his storage unit, then Danette's house, then driving 60 miles to a remote logging area near Loon Lake. He stayed for 45 minutes. 4 days later, he visited another wooded spot near his home, then returned to the Loon Lake area. At the site near his house, cadaver dogs found a shallow, empty grave with duct tape and plastic bags containing red hair. At the Loon Lake site, they found a deeper grave with Valerie's body, face down. She had been smothered. Evidence tied Brad to both sites. The bags matched ones in his kitchen. The duct tape matched tape in his basement. His boot and tire tracks were there, and the soil matched dirt from his truck and shovel. Fingerprints inside the bags and on the tape were his. Investigators believed Brad smothered Valerie with her pillow, dressed her in the clothes he later described to police, and buried her. They suspected his motive was to remove her as an obstacle to a relationship with Danette, who didn't get along with Valerie. Brad had even told his sister that if not for Valerie, he and Danette would be together. Police arrested Brad. He claimed a friend named Craig killed Valerie and showed him the grave, but later admitted he made that up. At trial, he admitted digging the graves, but insisted she died accidentally from an overdose of her antidepressant. Tests showed her medication levels were normal. The jury found him guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to 56 years in prison. Brad has never admitted to killing Valerie or to having any role in Roseanne's disappearance. Roseanne's case remains unsolved, though her family still believes Brad killed her. After Valerie's death, her school planted a tree in her memory. The case showed how someone can appear to be a caring parent on the outside while hiding dangerous motives. Oscar Ostrello Aguila photographed on August 2nd or 3rd, 2014. After taking this photo, he attempted to take a photo with a gun to post on Facebook, when the gun accidentally discharged and a bullet struck him in the head. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The last photo of the Tupolev 144 that later crashed during the 1973 Paris Air Show in Goussainville, France. All 6 people on board and 8 more on the ground perished. This plane could carry more people and fly even faster than Concorde, but it was rushed into service. Soviet spies stole over 90,000 technical documents from the Concorde program to help catch up. It entered service 2 months before Concorde, but passengers found it noisy, cramped, and unreliable. The engines were so loud people had to pass written notes to communicate. It only flew one passenger route from Moscow to Almaty once a week. Out of 102 flights, there were over 200 mechanical failures. Several crashes and engine problems made it unsafe. Unlike Concorde's advanced design, the Tupolev 144 needed continuous afterburners to stay supersonic and had hard, parachute-assisted landings. The Concorde lasted 27 years, serving wealthy travelers despite high costs. The Tupolev 144, with cheap ticket prices and no real market in the Soviet Union, was mostly a propaganda tool. It was retired from passenger service less than a year after it began. Italian singer-songwriter Mango pauses his performance in 2014, raises his hand and says "excuse me" to the audience, and collapses. He died en route to the hospital from a heart attack. He was only 60. Last picture of child star Anissa Jones, taken the day before she died. Anissa Jones was a famous child actress in the 1960s, best known for playing Buffy Davis on the TV show Family Affair. Her life seemed perfect to fans, but behind the scenes she faced many problems. Her story ended in tragedy when she died at just 18 years old in 1976. Anissa Mary Jones was born on March 11, 1958, in Indiana. Soon after her younger brother Paul was born, the family moved to California. The move would lead Anissa toward acting, but trouble started even before her career began. Not long after they arrived in California, Anissa's parents divorced. They fought a long and bitter battle over custody of Anissa and Paul. In the end, their father won. But while the court fight went on, Anissa lived with her mother Mary, who noticed her daughter's charm and talent early on. Mary signed Anissa up for dance classes when she was only 4 years old. Neighbors also found Anissa very cute and suggested she try TV commercials. Soon she was booking ads. Her first was for Serio when she was 6. Over the next 2 years, she made several more commercials, but bigger things were coming. When she was 8, Anissa was discovered by a TV producer and cast as Buffy Davis in a new CBS show called Family Affair. The show began in 1966 and was about 3 orphan children who go to live with their wealthy uncle. Anissa was perfect for the role. She was small for her age, so even though she was 8, she could easily play a 6-year-old. Viewers loved her pigtails, bright smile, and sweet personality. She became one of the most popular child stars on television. Buffy's doll, Mrs. Beasley, became so famous that the network sold a real version, which became the best-selling doll in America. There were also Buffy lunchboxes, coloring books, clothes, and even a cookbook with Anissa on the cover. Anissa was known for being kind and thoughtful. She loved her brother Paul and often shared gifts with him. On set, she was friendly with everyone and made guest stars feel welcome. In 1969, at the height of her fame, she appeared in her only movie, The Trouble with Girls, alongside Elvis Presley. She also appeared on several talk shows and even presented an award at the Emmy Awards when she was just 9 years old. Even though Family Affair was a big success, the work was exhausting. Anissa often filmed all year round and sometimes worked 7 days a week. As she got older, she began to dislike playing Buffy. She felt the role kept her stuck in a childish image and wanted to move on. Her performances became less enthusiastic, and by the early 1970s, ratings began to drop. In 1971, after 5 seasons, Family Affair was canceled. Anissa was happy to leave the role behind, but Hollywood still saw her as Buffy, and that made finding new roles hard. She tried for more grown-up parts, auditioning for the lead in The Exorcist and a role in Taxi Driver, but she lost both to other young actresses. Without steady acting work, Anissa began to drift. She experimented with drugs and shoplifting. She tried regular jobs but couldn't keep them. Her moods became unpredictable. Her father, who had been caring for her and Paul, died in March 1974, just days before her 16th birthday. Anissa then lived with her mother, but their relationship was strained. Her mother didn't like the friends Anissa spent time with, and often reported her missing to the police when she didn't come home for days. On her 18th birthday in March 1976, Anissa finally received the money she had earned from Family Affair, nearly $200,000. She quickly spent most of it within a few months, mainly on partying. On August 27, 1976, Anissa went with her boyfriend and friends to the beach town of Oceanside, California. They ended up at the home of the father of one of her younger friends. The next morning, August 28th, she was found dead from a massive drug overdose. The coroner was shocked at how much she had taken, saying it was one of the most extreme overdoses he had ever seen. Her ashes were scattered over the Pacific Ocean, a place she had always loved. Among her belongings was an envelope with the name and address of Dr. Don Carlos Moschos. It contained details about one of the drugs found in her system. Moschos already had a bad reputation. He was known for giving out prescriptions for dangerous drugs to almost anyone who asked. Many of his patients were young people around Anissa's age. Reports said he would sometimes write over 100 prescriptions a day, charging just $5 each. Only 6 days after Anissa's death, police arrested Moschos at his office. He was charged with illegally giving her drugs, as well as several other similar charges. But before he could face trial, Moschos, who was in poor health, died in December 1976. Anissa's family sued the doctor's estate for $400,000. In 1979, a court found Moschos 30% responsible for her death and awarded the family $80,000. Sadly, tragedy struck again in 1984. Anissa's brother Paul, whom she had loved dearly, also died from a drug overdose at age 24, just days after what would have been Anissa's 26th birthday. She was not the only family affair star to die young. Actor Sebastian Cabot, who played the uncle, died of a stroke in 1977 at age 59. Brian Keith, who played another main character, died by things he had done to himself in 1997. On September 4, 2023, Kelly Coopchiak, an Alaska Native woman, shared a selfie on Facebook. Less than a month later, on October 3rd, she vanished after setting out alone in her uncle's skiff. The boat was later found swamped. Kelly has not been seen or heard from since and is presumed dead. According to an online dispatch, Alaska state troopers spent 2 weeks searching by air, along the river, and on the ground before suspending active search efforts. And authorities say no foul play is suspected. One of the final pictures of Michael Jackson hours before he passed away on June 24, 2009. Last image of May Kwok and Kevin Scott Crookshank. Hit and killed mere seconds later by 2 women speeding in a stolen sedan. On Saturday morning, August 9, 2025, 55-year-old Kevin Crookshank set out on his usual bike ride from his home on Morningside Drive in New York City. Friends say he was an avid cyclist who loved long rides and was a warm, helpful presence in the neighborhood. But just a few hours later, he was dead. At around 7:30 a.m., Kevin was riding near the intersection of Canal Street and Bowery in Chinatown. At the same time, 2 young women in a stolen blue Chevy were speeding off the Manhattan Bridge. Police say the 23-year-old driver lost control of the car, jumped the curb, and hit Kevin and 63-year-old May Kwok, who had been sitting on a bench. Both were killed instantly. The car then slammed into an empty police van. Witnesses say the car was going so fast, possibly 70 to 80 miles per hour, that Kevin had no time to react. A man nearby tried to block the suspects from fleeing, but they ran off and were caught shortly afterward. Police sources say drugs and alcohol were found inside the stolen Chevy, which had been rented and was supposed to be returned in late June. Investigators also learned that the same driver had been involved in another hit-and-run on 13th April in Brooklyn, in which someone else was injured. At that time, she was arrested the next day and did not have a valid driver's license. Kevin had worked for over a decade at J.P. Morgan Chase. Friends and neighbors describe him as kind, welcoming, and always ready to help others. May Kwok, the second victim, was simply enjoying a quiet morning on a bench when her life was taken. Kevin's wife was too distraught to speak publicly, but shared a statement through a family representative saying he was a beloved part of the community. The driver, Autumn Romero, is in jail without bail facing murder and other serious charges, while the passenger, Kennedy LaCraft, faces theft and weapons charges with bail set at $150,000. Last photo of Malcolm X, shortly before he was assassinated. Last image of Naya Rivera and her son on July 8, 2020, at Lake Piru in California. Her son was found alone in the boat later that day. Naya's body was found on July 13th, and her cause of death was accidental drowning. The 33-year-old actress vanished after renting a pontoon boat around 1:30 p.m. with her 4-year-old son, Josie, at the lake, located about an hour outside Los Angeles. This dock marks the spot where Rivera began her ill-fated trip. When she didn't return on time, a dock employee went looking for her and found the boy alone on the boat. He told authorities his mother had gone swimming and never came back. Rivera was not wearing a life jacket, though her vest was later found on the boat. Police believe her disappearance was likely a tragic accident. The pontoon, similar to the one Rivera rented, can hold up to 10 passengers and costs $250 to rent, but she and her son were the only ones aboard. Her Mercedes G-Wagon was later found parked near the marina. The search was suspended at nightfall and resumed at first light the next morning. On social media, Rivera had often shared affectionate photos with her son. In March, she had shared a haunting video of herself underwater in a bathtub, writing, "Gravity keeps pulling me under, but the urge to breathe helps me stay afloat." A woman named Alice Seeley Harris took this photograph showing a man named Sala from Congo. He looks at the separated hand and foot of his little daughter, who was only 5 years old. This happened because he could not collect enough rubber that day. His daughter and her mother were killed and then cannibalized. This photo was taken moments before a playground equipment collapsed at a local amusement park, killing 4 boys and girls. A picture of Japanese Prime Minister Hideki Tojo taken on the day of his execution, 23rd December, 1948. Hideki Tojo was one of the most important Japanese leaders during World War II. He served as Prime Minister for most of the war and also held many other powerful jobs. After the war, he was found guilty of serious crimes committed by the Japanese army and was executed. Tojo believed Japan should strike the United States first. He supported the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, saying it was needed to protect Japan's interests. Many remember him for war crimes like the Bataan Death March and for being connected to the deaths of millions. In July 1940, Tojo became war minister. He supported an alliance with Nazi Germany and Italy, forming the Axis powers. When Prime Minister Fumimaro Konoe resigned in October 1941, Tojo took his place. At first, he tried to avoid war, but talks with the United States failed. On December 8, 1941, Tojo announced that Japan was at war with the US, Britain, and the Netherlands. Early victories made him popular, but Japanese troops committed many brutal acts under his rule. The tide turned after Japan lost the Battle of Midway in 1942. Despite growing problems, Tojo gained near total control of the government. In 1944, major defeats, including the loss of Saipan, led to heavy bombing of Japan. On July 18, 1944, Tojo resigned. After Japan surrendered in 1945, Tojo was seen as the main person responsible for the war. When American soldiers came to arrest him, he tried to die but survived. He was taken to Shigamo prison and put on trial for war crimes, including starting wars illegally and mistreating prisoners. Found guilty, Tojo was sentenced to death by hanging. On December 23, 1948, just before his 64th birthday, he was executed in Tokyo. His ashes were scattered from a U.S. Army plane over the sea. Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, leaving the hospital after treatment for an infection and a heart procedure, just weeks before his death in 2021. On December 22, 2018, a band named 17 from Indonesia would perform at a concert before a tsunami unexpectedly struck. All the band members except the vocalist were killed, including several people in the audience. The wave hit mid-performance, killing 2 band members, their road manager, and a crew member, according to local reports. Formed in 1999, 17 took its name from the fact that all its original members were 17 years old at the time. Among those still missing after the disaster were the lead singer's wife and another crew member. Authorities say the tsunami was triggered by a volcanic eruption on Saturday. However, the eruption caused no detectable tremors, so no official tsunami warning was issued. The disaster claimed more than 200 lives nationwide, left hundreds injured. Photo Lisa Wright posted to her Facebook page on June 24, 2021. In September of that year, she disappeared. Her body was found in March 2025, hidden under debris in the garage of a vacant house in Gary, Indiana. She was last known to be living on the 6600 block of Melton Road in Gary. For years, her family and friends searched for her, shared her story, and hoped she would come home. In January 2025, Lisa's family and friends, including her best friend Brenda Jones, spoke at an event hosted by Team NWI Independent Search and Rescue at the Second Life resale shop in Crown Point. Brenda said she was upset with the Gary Police Department, believing they did not treat some missing person cases with enough urgency. On March 28, 2024, the case took a very sad turn. Skeletal remains were found at a home in the 2600 block of Jefferson Street in Gary. The Lake County Coroner's Office came to the scene at 2:10 p.m., and Lisa was pronounced dead at 2:46 p.m. The remains were sent to the University of Indianapolis for more testing. Over a year later, on April 29, 2025, officials confirmed the remains were Lisa's. The cause of her death is still not known, and the investigation is ongoing. Team NWI, who had worked hard on Lisa's case, shared their sadness, saying, "We've been looking for Lisa Wright for a long time and became close with her mother, Jerry Wright, during our searches. While the way she was found is heartbreaking, we're thankful her family can now start to heal. We will keep fighting for justice in her memory." Lisa Wright is no longer missing. She is not just a name or a picture. She was a daughter, a friend, and someone deeply loved. Her story deserves answers. An unnamed Afghan couple about to be stoned to death by Taliban militants for committing adultery with each other. This took place in Afghanistan's Saripul province in September 2015. One of the final images captured of Air India 171 taking off from Ahmedabad, captured by CCTV. As this image was taken, both engines shut down. Seconds later, it crashed into a hostel, killing all but one person on board and many others on the ground. One passenger, Vishwas Kumar, survived. He had been sitting near the emergency exit in seat 11A. After the crash, buried under rubble and soft soil, he woke up injured but alive. He managed to unbuckle his seatbelt, crawl out through a broken exit door, and limp away from the smoke. Still in shock, he called his father in London. When rescuers found him, he refused to leave because he wanted to find his brother, who was still inside. Out of 242 passengers, Vishwas was the only one who made it out alive. The flight had many people going to London: families, students, grandparents, and even former Gujarat Chief Minister Vijay Rupani. The weather was clear and the runway was long, but after reaching 625 feet, the plane suddenly lost height. The pilot radioed Mayday and said they were losing power. Moments later, the aircraft crashed into the hostel of BJ Medical College. Experts have different ideas about why it happened: problems with the landing gear, flap settings, engine thrust, or even both engines failing. This is the first fatal accident involving Air India's Dreamliner since it began flying in 2011. It has led to many safety checks and flight cancellations. The Bubble Inn cabin at Camp Mystic hosted 13 girls and 2 counselors. The bodies of 10 girls and 1 counselor have been found, while the other 4 remain missing. The flash flood that took all their lives occurred in the early morning hours of July 4, 2025, in the Texas Hill Country. The number of people who have died is now 104. A group from the Bubble cabin, 13 girls and 2 counselors, were swept away when a huge wave of water hit the summer camp. Camp Mystic said that 27 campers and counselors have died, and 4 are still missing. Some of the youngest victims were only 8 and 10 years old. The cabin was just 500 feet from the Guadalupe River, where the flooding was worst over the July 4th weekend. So far, 10 girls and 18-year-old counselor Chloe Childress have been found dead. The camp's director, Richard Eastland, died while trying to save the children. Another counselor, Catherine Ferrudo, and campers Molly Dwight, Ellen Getton, and Abby Paul are still missing. Among the dead are 8-year-olds Renee Sorolla and Sarah Marsh, 9-year-olds Eloise Peak and Laya Bonner, and sisters Blair, 13, and Brooke Harbor, 11. The sisters were found holding hands 15 miles away from the camp. Rescue teams are still searching for those missing in Texas. The Guadalupe River, made much bigger by heavy rain, overflowed early Friday, sweeping away camps, homes, and whole neighborhoods in central Texas. Goulston Street graffito. In 1888, London was living in fear because of a killer known as Jack the Ripper. He had already murdered several women in the Whitechapel area. On the night of September 30th, 2 more women were attacked: Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes. After Eddowes was killed, police found part of her blood-stained apron in a doorway on Goulston Street. Above it, written in chalk on a wall, was a strange message: "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." The meaning of the words was unclear, but police worried it might cause anger toward Jewish people in the area. Some officers thought the killer wrote it, while others believed it was just a random message already on the wall. The police commissioner, Sir Charles Warren, decided the writing should be erased before daylight, so crowds would not see it. This choice upset some investigators, because the message might have been an important clue. No one knows if the graffito was really left by Jack the Ripper, or if it was only a coincidence. It remains one of the most debated mysteries in the Ripper case. Last image of Siemens CEO, his wife, and 3 young children who died in a helicopter crash. This is the eye of a person who has an atomic bomb cataract caused by radiation. A cataract is when the lens of the eye becomes cloudy, making it hard to see. It can happen slowly over time, but in this case, it was caused by strong radiation from the atomic bomb. Before this, people already knew that radiation could cause cataracts in animals. But after the atomic bombings in Japan, doctors began to see the same thing in humans. The radiation damaged the eye's lens, and over time, it turned cloudy. This condition can make vision blurry or dim, and in severe cases, it can lead to blindness. The photograph shows how serious and frightening this kind of cataract can be. A photo taken just before Japan Airlines Flight 123 arrived. Everyone in this photo here would be dead soon. Jimi Hendrix taking tea with his Stratocaster, the day before he died, aged just 27. Jimi Hendrix became a music legend through his powerful songs and unforgettable live shows. When he died suddenly at age 27, he left behind one of the greatest legacies in rock music. Jimi Hendrix seemed born to be a rock star, but his success came from years of hard work. In just a few short years, he worked himself to exhaustion. He started his career on the East Coast of the U.S., playing in different bands. British musician Chas Chandler, bassist of The Animals, saw Hendrix's talent and took him to England to form the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Hendrix first became famous in the UK, where audiences loved his style and stage presence. But behind the scenes, his life was filled with constant touring and recording. By 1970, he was worn out. Hendrix's health was failing, his finances were messy, and his personal relationships were full of stress. He even told a reporter, "I'm not sure I will live to be 28." At the end of his life, Hendrix was spending time with Monika Dannemann, a German former figure skater who claimed they were deeply in love and engaged. Many of Hendrix's friends said this wasn't true and that their relationship was casual. On the night he died, Hendrix was with Dannemann at her hotel in London. He couldn't sleep and took 9 of her sleeping pills, 18 times the normal dose. Dannemann was the last person to see Hendrix alive. Her story about what happened that night changed many times. She claimed she left to buy cigarettes, and when she came back, Hendrix was unresponsive. She said she called an ambulance sometime between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m., but some believe she waited too long to hide drugs from the room. Rumors about Hendrix's death quickly spread. Some people believed his manager, Michael Jeffrey, had him killed because Hendrix wanted to leave him. In 2009, a former roadie claimed Jeffrey once admitted to the murder. Others suggested the mafia or even the FBI were involved, but there is no proof for any of these theories. On May 1, 1915, the Lusitania would be photographed here as it departed from New York City. 4 days later, she would be torpedoed and sunk by SMU-20, taking 1,197 people with her. In January 2015, 27-year-old George Pickering from Texas had a stroke and was rushed to the hospital. He was put on life support, and doctors told his family he was brain dead. They suggested removing the life support because they believed there was no chance of recovery. George's father refused to accept this. He left the hospital for a while, but when he returned, his family had already agreed to remove the machines, keeping George alive. His father begged for more time, but the doctors and family stood by their decision. Desperate, George's father got a gun from his car, came back to the hospital, and forced the doctors to leave his son's room. He held George's hand, praying for a sign of life, while police surrounded the room. Just as the SWAT team broke in, George squeezed his father's hand. This proved he was alive. The doctors checked and confirmed he had opened his eyes too. George eventually made a full recovery. His father was sentenced to 10 months in prison for using a weapon, but the family believes it was worth it because his actions saved George's life. The last known photo of John Allen Chow, an American missionary who attempted to convert the isolated tribe on North Sentinel Island. In 2018, he paid fishermen to take him into the island's restricted waters. He was last seen being dragged, and his body was pierced with arrows.